Okay, so the French government has just collapsed. What happens now? Let's check this out.
After Bayrou's bombshell announcement that he would call a vote of confidence on his policies, he's been kicked out of office. To most people, this is not a surprise. But now, everything is up in the air. People are going out to protest on the 10th, and more mobilizations are planned on the 18th. No clear solution, political disarray, and in one word, chaos. So how did France end up here? Well, it all goes back to June 2024, after Emmanuel Macron's party performed so badly in the European elections that they made a bold, some would say extremely reckless, move. He cold snapped legislative elections, but the gamble did not work. Far from it. The result was a hung parliament that has deadlocked politics ever since. Three big blocs emerged: Macron's centrist Ensemble, Marine Le Pen's National Rally, and the left-wing Popular Front. Each of them ended up with about a third of the seats, which meant nobody had a majority, and politics quickly got stuck. Now in France, the president chooses the prime minister, and Macron had to try several times. First came Gabriel Attal, Macron's young protégé, and the country's youngest ever prime minister. But without support in the parliament, his government did not last long. Next up, Michel Barnier, the veteran politician and former Brexit negotiator. But his austerity-focused budget collapsed, and so did his government, after a vote of no confidence.
It's interesting. Every time anyone brings like an austerity plan, the left usually says, no, we don't like not spending money, right? I mean, I don't know exactly what he was proposing, but it's funny that every time everyone says, okay, yeah, let's try balancing the numbers here. No way.
Confidence. And finally, François Bayrou. On paper, he looked like a safe pair of hands, but his 2026 budget was explosive. 44 billion euros in cuts, scrapping 2 public holidays, and freezing welfare spending. For many in parliament, it was simply too much. So in the end, Bayrou called a vote of confidence. It was a risky move from the start, and commentators were already asking why an opposition that despises his government would ever turn to back him. But Bayrou's argument was simple. If Parliament gave him its confidence, he'd have the legitimacy to push through his controversial budget later this year. But the gamble backfired spectacularly. The vote went against him, and Bayrou is now out of office, which leaves France right back where it started. Another prime minister gone, no majority in parliament, and no clear path forward. Ouch. So the big question is, how does this political crisis affect France? And perhaps, more importantly, what comes next? Let's look at 3 scenarios. Scenario 1. Macron appoints a new prime minister. This remains the most probable course of action for President Macron. And one name frequently mentioned as a potential successor is Sébastien Lecornu, currently serving as France's Minister of the Armed Forces. Lecornu is the youngest person to ever hold this position, having been appointed at the age of 39. His appointment has been marked by a focus on strengthening France's military and enhancing its role in European defense. However, this move is unlikely to restore political stability. Lecornu is not that popular and would most likely get pushed out very quickly, which would just restart the crisis all over again, especially as the 2026 budget vote approaches. Now, before we get into the second reason, a quick thank you to the people who make these videos possible. Our Patreon supporters and YouTube members. A special shout out to our presidents, Jeanette, Jan, Kristen, Peter, HEVD, Daniel, Stefan, Unite Europe. A year since the last vote, Macron finally has this option on the table again. But this move is super risky. Macron could lose even more seats, potentially giving more power to the far right. The National Rally, led by Marine Le Pen and Jordan Bardella, has been gaining popularity and could capitalize on the situation to increase its influence. The polls are not exactly favorable for Macron right now, so it's unlikely it would end well for him.
Damn, commies are still very, very strong. It's incredible.
Here's the thing. It might actually be more likely than it sounds. Appointing yet another prime minister could just make people angrier. The public is already super frustrated with how the government is handling the economy and social issues, and swapping leaders probably won't calm that down. And some even think Macron might have a bigger strategy in mind, deliberately letting the far right govern. The logic goes like this: if they take power now, they'll have to deal with the messy realities of running a country. And if their policies prove unpopular, it could backfire, leaving them weaker by the time the 2027 presidential elections come around.
Right, a tragedy of we screwed everything up, now you take charge, and it's going to last a few months. Next year, we'll just be back again, you know?
But yeah, this is very risky. Then there's scenario 3. Macron could leave office. And really, there are only 2 ways this could happen. Resignation
I don't see
or impeachment. But in practice, both are long shots.
Yeah.
Publicly, Macron keeps saying there's no way he'll resign and that he'll stay in office until 2027. But of course, politicians always say that. Admitting otherwise would basically be game over instantly. Behind the scenes though, it's not entirely unthinkable. Some commentators even suggest resignation could be used as a strategy to block Marine Le Pen from the presidency. You see, Le Pen was convicted of embezzling EU funds and handed a 5-year ban from holding public office. She's appealing the decision, but the verdict won't come until next year. So if Macron were to call a presidential election now, the far right would likely have to put forward another candidate. Most likely.
What is up with these assholes, the far right? It's the right. Right, that's it. It's right and the left. The far right. Does he say far left every time he mentions the fucking commies? Of course not.
Jordan Bardella. Technically possible, but for now, it's more of a theory than a real plan. The much likelier outcome, he digs in and tries to ride out the crisis and stays in office until 2027.
Yeah.
Either way, though, the mood in France is tense. The country is sitting on a massive debt problem.
Everyone, sweetheart, is in a big problem. Every country is struggling. Every country in Europe, United States, every country all over the world, especially in the West, they are all struggling very bad because the amount of poverty, the amount of spending by all of these governments, and as he just mentioned, in spite of all the far-right bullshit, no one wants to admit that you need to balance the numbers. You need to stop spending money. No one wants to swallow that pill, which is the only one that has any chance of success, which is stop spending more money, stop printing money. The more you do that, the more you impoverish everyone. But at the same time, especially in Europe, and he's not mentioning because he's a dirty commie himself, and these EU Made Simple channel apparently, the enormous problem of the invasion that you have. You have an invasion of illegals all over Europe. I just mentioned how UK has already fallen. UK is gone. It's a United Islamic Kingdom at this point. And France is really not that far away. France would be the next domino to fall in terms of the invasion, right? From these African, Middle Eastern forces. But that's one of the main issues, right? If it wasn't for that insane spending, not only do you have these people they're all on welfare. They all have a bunch of kids. They're all some of the worst costs that you have, while at the same time being some of the worst in terms of social stability and safety when you're out and about on the streets, which really screws up the climate, the political and social climate for everyone. So it is a complex problem and it has no simple solution. And obviously in French, it's going to be a few rough months ahead. Folks, as always, if you want to learn more and prepare for what's coming, you have the channel. I always recommend Surviving the Economic Collapse through Survival Skills. And remember, you have the French version of Surviving the Economic Collapse as well, Survivre l'Enforcement Économique. Anyway, look it up in Amazon.fr. All right? See you later. Take care.